Welcome to Palladium's webinar on 5 tips of effective security monitoring. Although the topic says about only 5 tips, in fact we'll be discussing on 5 topics and tips on each of them. So we all know that with rising trends and for advanced reporting on security incidents. Moving to the agenda, we have enabling security events as one of the key tip, and this is one of the topic, and we'll be discussing on tips for this topic. Second one is implementing security use cases, using threat intelligence feeds, incident response and feedback, perform incident analytics. So moving to the first topic, so basically these are the key drivers that that will help you in effective security monitoring. The 5 topics that we have discussed: enabling security events, implementing security use cases, using threat intelligence feeds, incident response, incident analytics, which will give a holistic view of how do you do an effective security monitoring. So let us look at the first topic, enabling security events. So this is how we have spanned out. Under each topic, there will be challenges, impacts, followed by tips. So if we go to the first topic, which is enabling security events, we have challenges such as different systems of same technologies sends different set of log events. So this is the first challenge that we face. Depending upon the environment we have different set of logs that are enabled, which are collected by SIEM. So that's the first challenge that we face as part of log collection. The second challenge is use cases are available in SIEM, but the corresponding log is not present. So we say that we have all the related use cases, the vendor and the MSP has provided a lot of use cases, but we don't have the corresponding log present in our system. The third challenge is log enabling settings changes over time because of multiple reasons. One of the reasons is the asset owner comes back saying just by enabling those logs I have system performance issues. So that is one of the challenges that we face on an operational front. The fourth one is with new technology being integrated, there is no clarity on what type of events that can be enabled for effective monitoring. So these are basically the 4 challenges that we face when we start up with enabling security events for monitoring. Impacts, those are listed, are since log events are not standard, there is no assurance of log of attack detection. So we know that with multiple types of events being collected, since it is not standardized, and it depends on multiple environments. We cannot give an assurance of a probable attack or of a detection of a probable attack. So that's one of the impact. Second one is the asset owners are not on the same page with the monitoring team. So it's basically the asset owners has to be made aware about what kind of monitoring that we have initiated for the assets that are getting integrated. The third impact is when an attack gets missed from SOC, we realize that it was not being monitored. That particular event was not being monitored. So basically these are the 3 primary impacts that we have seen by not enabling the right events for monitoring. So let us look at the tips for this topic. So the first tip is identify and categorize types of events required to be monitored. For this thing, you can take input from your internal security policy requirements. So certain things which your policy says has to be monitored or controlled, you can try and get those integrated for monitoring. Types of threats in the environment. So there are multiple, like for a financial firm, there are different threats. For banking or for a manufacturing firm, the threats are different. So for an e-tailing firm, the threats are different. So based on those environments, you can define your own being followed. So it depends on multiple organizations what kind of best security practices they are following and what is to be monitored to ensure that those practices are adhered to. And the final one is regulatory and compliance requirements. Basically, there are some regulations which are to be monitored, and that the organization face a lot of challenge in ensuring that the regulatory compliance are met. So those identifying those events and bringing them into monitoring is what we can look forward to. Second one is develop and maintain log enabling procedure document for all monitoring platforms. So basically having a detailed document for log enabling and maintaining those documents is a key to make sure that the right events are being enabled. The third tip is involving the asset owners and in the development of these documents. So if I say too many events getting enabled will have performance impact. The right set of events not getting enabled will have security impacts. So involving the asset owners in the use case developing phase is something which has to be looked at. So that's one of the tips for this. Then moving forward, validate and review those documents and those log enablement process. Like first time you do a validation when you integrate the log source, then do a periodic review of onboarded log sources. So you say that I have enabled those log sources with a predefined process, and it has to be reviewed on a periodic basis. If I say that these are the set of checklist of enabling logs on a log source, I have to periodically review those settings so that the right kind of events are coming to my SIM. So moving to the second topic, implementing security use case. So there are a few challenges for this particular topic. We say that taking all use cases provided out of the box by SIM vendor or as advised by MSSP. So you need not take all the use cases which are provided out of the box. You take the relevant use cases which are for your environment, understand those use cases and enable them for log monitoring. We also have a notion of enabling all the use cases and just to ensure that none of the incidents are lost. We try to avoid incident by enabling all the set of use cases just to ensure that the risk is covered. So that's one of the challenge. The third challenge is use cases are focused on operations monitoring rather than security. So most of the use cases are based on activity tracking, user activity tracking, or login logouts. So these are the things which affect our security monitoring. So if I say that I do a lot of operational monitoring and not security monitoring, that is not giving a best value add of a SIM deployment. The fourth challenge is no necessary buy-in from the asset owners. So again, from this particular topic, we are saying that we need and buy-in from the asset owners so that they understand and they have some sort of ownership while developing use cases and for their respective assets. The impacts, we are saying too many use cases resulting in high number of alerts and reports to have a focus. So basically we are saying that enabling too many use cases, the amount of alerts that are received, it's too much to handle, and basically the essence of security monitoring is lost. So we have to enable the events which are really required to be monitored and which are key. So this is one of the impact that organizations face nowadays, where they try and enable all the things into SIM, and the actual essence of security monitoring is lost. Another thing is without the buy-in, we will not get any response for any security monitoring output. So we are saying that we have enabled the assets under your ownership for security monitoring, and we'll be giving you alerts. There will be no response if they don't take them on board from the stage one itself. So that's one of the challenge which we face, which organizations face on a very large fund where they say that okay, the asset owners are not aware of what kind of monitoring we are doing. So when the alerts are sent marked to them, they don't respond to those alerts. And the third impact is if we do a lot of operational activity tracking, the SIM is underutilized. So SIM is, we have to utilize SIM to the fullest with security event monitoring rather than operational activity monitoring. So tip for this topic would be, if I say identify log events for threat scenarios, technology controls and policy violations and translate them into use cases. So here we are saying that you have to identify, you have to have a phase where we do a study of what kind of threats are there for the environment, what are the controls that you are trying to monitor, and what are the policy violations that you are trying to monitor. And then try and see whether there are events associated with these kind of logical controls, and then try and monitor them. Then second tip is involve technology assets owner for use case development. So again, the same point, they have to be onboarded from stage one itself, so that they also feel part of this project, and they work hand in hand in being an effective doing effective security monitoring. Another tip is categorize use cases based on severity. Some use cases need real-time attention, some can be looked at end of day or end of month. So you have to categorize those use cases based on severity. If I say a config change as a category, config change on any of my device, that has to be categorized. If I say a critical config change which says a vulnerable rule added or a vulnerable policy added in my device, has to be triggered as a high alert. So that's how you create a severity. Or if you say that there's an internal rule created, or which has a very less severity, which is just an internal enabling of users to the server segment, that has to be, you have to prioritize your use cases based on, so configuration change is one of the category which you can think of. Then you say test and validate all use cases before go live. So all those use cases which are being developed logically, you have drafted all those use cases, you have to test those use cases, validate the associated event from the log source, and then go live. Don't just enable those use cases and without they being fired in the later stage. So do a test, validate, do a mock test of all the use cases that are being integrated, and before you make them live. The fifth tip is basically acknowledge feedback from asset owners and to refine the use cases. So this is the ongoing step where you take input from asset owners, refine your use case, define thresholds, refine the conditions of alerting. So that will make the use case more relevant. So rather than just forcing something on the asset owners that these are the alerts that I'll be sending based on these thresholds and these conditions, you take input from them, refine those conditions, thresholds, time parameters, like if the alert has to be sent only in business hours, we'll be sending those in business hours. So those kind of inputs are really required from asset owners. If the asset owner is not really interested of anything outside business hours, we don't. So those inputs should come to SOC. The next step is doing a periodic review and redefine thresholds, exclusions. So basically we have to identify the use cases which has never triggered since they went live. So just to review them, check the conditions, whether the conditions are matching the requirement, the conditions are meeting the environment expectations or the client expectations, and then making it live. The final one is completely avoid health monitoring use cases. In fact, that's the no-do thing for security monitoring. So a lot of customers, a lot of organizations enable health monitoring use cases like a device going down or reboot, or say memory usage high or CPU usage high. So that can be done outside SIM as well. So SIM, you focus mainly on security monitoring. So the third topic is using threat intelligence feeds. So this is one of the niche thing, and it's a marriage made in heaven for SIM and TI feeds. So with the internal data that we get from that gives a valuable actionable item coming out of it. So if I say challenges for using threat intelligence feeds are too many threads, feed sources, huge IP database, and it becomes too much of a task to integrate and then keep monitoring them. The second challenge is determining accuracy, reliability, and applicability of this TI feeds. So whenever you shortlist a TI feed source, make sure it is accurate, reliable, and applicable to your environment. So if I say I have enrolled for certain feeds, be it free, be it paid, make sure that those are accurate, applicable, and they are reliable source of information before you integrate with your SIM solution. The next challenge is integrating live feeds into real-time monitoring. So if I say I'm getting feeds from certain sources that has to be integrated with my real-time monitoring, lot of organizations are facing challenges in doing that because the frequency differ. It is either a 24-hour update or a 1-hour update, and that has to be integrated with some logic behind it. Then tracking update frequency from blacklist and darklist type. So the multiple sources give a different varied frequency. Some do it in 4 hours, some do it every hour, some do it real time, some give it in 24 hours. So tracking those update is also a challenge which we see from this topic. So the impacts are huge IP to work upon, resulting into performance and prioritization issues. So if I say the IP list is huge, if I integrate it with my SIM solution, I have a lot of IPs to check before I give a meaningful actionable to out of SIM, and I don't know which IPs to be prioritized. So that is one of the challenge. This is one of the impact why if you take multiple TI feeds. Using stale IP resulting into so a lot of TI feed sources they have IP listed 6 months back and they have not flushed it. So they are still retained in their database and that database is passed on to us. So the content is a stale content. So if that is getting analyzed into SIM, there is a chance of a lot of false positives being triggered. So that is one of the impact that we have seen with TI feeds integration. If we don't apply right filters of IPs, we again will have a lot of false positives. So filters as in the scores, the IP scores which we try and get it. So most of the threat-free sources provide you a IP score which you can utilize to understand the priority and filter those IPs and then only look for certain IPs rather than looking at the entire bunch. So tip for this topic is we say decide the most applicable and relevant threat feeds based on your business environment and geography region. So this is a primary factor for deciding a threat feed. I don't want a threat feed which is applicable to if I'm a banking firm, I don't want a threat feed which is applicable to a manufacturing sector. So these are the things which are the primary things to be checked before enrolling or subscribing for a threat feed. Verifying the criteria of how this dark list and blacklist or suspicious list are getting derived by the sources. So this is one of the criteria. Whenever you try and enroll with a threat feed, just try and understand their criteria of identifying a blacklist or a suspicious IP. So that is a key because whenever we try and give that as an output of SIM, so whenever these threat intelligence feeds are getting integrated, we get an output from SIM. So we have to understand, okay, these are the IPs which are doing a lot of noise, which are doing certain attempts to this particular sector. We should know why these IPs are getting derived. So verifying the criteria is a key. Integrate based on risk scores. So a lot of threat feed sources provide risk scores on IPs, and that can be utilized to prioritize the IPs and then start working on those IPs and integrate them into SIM. And also checking the frequency of those feeds, the update frequency of those feeds coming to your SIM. The fourth tip is combining local observations, monitoring observations into external feeds for better context and alert tries. So if I say I have some local observations within my network, confined to my network, if I combine these local observations with a external feed, I can get a better context and I can prioritize those actionable events. So I have a better alert triage to handle. So if I know that, okay, these are the noise making IPs internal to my network, are these IP communicating to external IP? So what is that external IP? Is it doing two-way communication between my internal systems and the CNC centers? So this will help me prioritizing things on my alerts. So this is the fourth tip. Fifth one is incorporate alert matching with the TI feeds. So all the IPs that you have shortlisted based on the scores and the noise making IPs, just take those IPs, integrate them into use cases, and that will give you a good result. The fourth topic is incident response and feedback. So the challenge is here is, in fact, incident response and feedback is one of the key item for security monitoring. A lot of things, like many of the organizations, they focus mainly on detection and reporting. There's no follow-up action of those alerts which are reported. Asset owners don't have responsibility of SOC output. So if the asset owners is not part of the SOC project, they'll not feel the responsible responding to the outputs of SOC. So any alert which is sent to an asset owner, they'll not respond to those alerts. So that's one of the challenges that organizations are facing. SOC team does not have enough data to advise asset owners on reported incidents. So if the SOC team doesn't have the right data, the right information about the asset, they'll not be able to provide you additional information on the incident to manage the incident and bring it to closure. There's no process, no tool to facilitate incident response or resolutions with SLA. So this is one of the challenges, that there's no tool, there's no process to initiate an incident response and bring it to a resolution with a defined SLA. So currently this is not in place for most of the organizations. No feedback on reported incidents by asset. So again, the same thing. There's no feedback coming from the incidents that are reported by SOC team. So the impacts are huge pile of alerts and reports with no follow-up action. Unresolved incidents due to lack of ownership. A lot of incidents are open since the ownership is not properly defined. Degradation of use case effectiveness over time, there is no feedback from incident analysis. So all the use cases, even though they are good, they're getting all the right events for monitoring. If those are not getting the right feedbacks, no change in thresholds, no condition, no proper fine tuning, the effectiveness loses. So that's one of the impact that we can see from this one. The tips for this would be maintain asset register listing all assets under monitoring with clear ownership defined for incident response. So for security monitoring, if you have a list of all assets with clear ownership defined of whom to be alerted when this event happens. So that is one of the key things that has to be available with SOC team. Define SLA for incident response and resolution, forcing the owner to act to security monitoring alerts. So if we have defined SLAs for incident response and resolution, that will force the owner or the incident management team to attend to security monitoring alerts. The third tip is providing easy mechanism to gather feedbacks and track it from asset owners. So using an online ticketing tool where you raise certain issues, assign it to an asset owner or the concerned team and gather feedback, so that can help you in better security monitoring. So you can have a feedback mechanism to change the thresholds, update your use cases, get more information about the asset so that it can be utilized in further analysis. The fourth tip is two-way communication between asset owners and monitoring team to fine-tune use cases. So creating a whitelist, blacklist based on the feedback and ensuring the use cases are upgraded over time. So basically we are saying that if the feedback is received from the asset owners about whitelisting or blacklisting, try and incorporate them into SIM so that the alerting makes more sense. The last one is providing more asset information to SOC team. So if the network topology information, existing compensatory controls for for the asset is provided to SOC. The fine-tuning of alerts can be done so that it can reduce the false positives coming to the actionable tips. The last one is incident analytics. It's one of the you can say level 2 of security monitoring, where we say that the current challenges that we have for incident analytics is we have not identified the requirements for analytics. So we don't know why do we want to do it, what is to be done, when is to be, like defining the frequency, when do we do it, and who will do it. Is it the operations team, or is it a team which is completely out of operations, or where to do it? Is it, do you want to do it on SIM, or do you want to have an independent tool to do such analysis? Another challenge is too much focus on noise making events. So if I do an incident analysis, the idea is to focus on the noise making events and forget the key or most suspicious events. The third challenge is effective tools for performing analytics. So either automated or manual. So we have to identify which tool is best suited to my requirement. I can do it in a manual way of Excel sheets, doing a pivot and identifying the all adding filters and identifying the most suspicious ones, or use an automated tool to give me some trends, some analysis, some level of filtering, advanced filtering, and give me a good posture of what is happening in my network. The fourth challenge is all these analytics observation has to be pushed into an actionable item. So all the analytics observation has to be pushed into an actionable item. So a person who is doing analysis should be able to take that, should be able to derive the actionables and pass on to the right team. So that's one of the challenge which we are facing with incident analytics. So the impact is huge database of log events is undoable. So basically we say that we get a lot of events, but since we don't do an analysis, the huge data or the events data is misused or it is underutilized. With analytics, we say that since we are focusing more on noisy events, the slow and low attacks are undetected. So with analysis, with long-term data analysis, we can see which system or which attackers are doing some attempts on a very slow and low fashion. So we can figure out those attempts through analytics. Okay, so attack patterns and attack behaviors never emerge. So the thing is basically, if we have a right use case to detect a real-time event, we sometimes forget about how did it started. Has it started with a recon scan, or has it started with some sort of scanning activity and ultimately an attack attempt? So those are the impacts with incident analytics. The tips that we have is identify tools and methods for performing analytics. So we say that first and the foremost thing is to identify which tool is right suited for my requirement, and I have to define certain methods of doing analytics. So if I say that I'll be taking logs from my SIM solution and putting into an analytics tool and deriving certain analysis, so this is something which has to be identified. The analytics operation has to be decoupled from the security monitoring operation. So if I say that there has to be an analytics team which is focused on looking at trends, history of events, and give some meaningful output, it has to be decoupled from the operations team, so that they focus more on providing analysis and not look at operational things. The third tip is looking at more suspicious behavior rather than the noise making events. So if I say the key for incident analytics is focusing on most suspicious event rather than the top count of events. The most suspicious events can be derived from attack patterns based on exploits, malware traffic, a two-way communication happening from your network to outside. It may be a slow and low attempt, but it has to be analyzed. It has to be picked up from the logs. Looking at recon history, so we say that a lot of attacks has happened because of the attacker has done a lot of scannings initially. he found some loopholes and then he has done an exploit. So looking at those attempts is also key for analytics. Volume drop, something has started on a very slow pace and finally has resulted into a voluminous attack. So that can come from an analytics observation. Policy violations, that can also be an analysis. So we say that somebody has done some violations, say 5 days back, and now we see that then the actual so looking for trends and patterns from historical events, so that somebody has done some scanning attempts initially for a certain period and then they have tried doing an attack, is something that can be pulled out from an analytics activity. Analytics can also give you a cross-device correlation, like we get logs from multiple sources, so multiple log sources, those can be pumped into an analytics tool and we can derive certain correlations from those rules. So these are the kind of tips that we can try and bring in to have an effective security monitoring in place. The key points to remember, we have the first point says goal for monitoring is not just detection. So we say that we should not just use SIM for detection, but to mitigate and remediate and focus mainly on incident management. So all the alerts that are raised has to be closed with a logical conclusion, take the feedback and fine tune the use case so that those events can be either whitelisted or made more finer to give a meaningful or a non-false positive alert. You can only monitor what you can collect. So standardized log collection and check status. So basically we say that enable the events which you require for monitoring. If you don't enable those events, you cannot detect an attack pattern. So basically we are saying that log collection has to be standardized so that all the right events are coming to SIM for meaningful alerting. Involving asset owners for a SOC project is as a key. Take them on board from day one so that the buy-in has to be there and they decide on the success of this project. So all stages like baselining, integration, use case development, all these stages, the asset owner has to be involved so that they feel the ownership of providing inputs for a successful SIM deployment or security event monitoring project. Fourth key point is use cases are dynamic and not static. So gathering feedback from the asset owners, the incident management team, and finding the use cases in backend is a right approach to go for, so that we get the right alerts, actionable alerts, so that and reducing the false positive count. So taking the feedback on a very periodic fashion from either from the asset owners or incident management team is something that can be looked at. Discovering hidden threats using analytics, looking at historical pattern, looking at most suspicious events and not just looking at the noise making events is something that has to be put into analytics so that you give a good dimension to security monitoring. Yeah, any questions? Yeah, so one of the question is there any specific periodicity of maintaining and monitoring documents mentioned in slide 5? So if I say the baselining documents, which I think this is what I understood. So the baseline documents which are created or the documents that we have identified to be reviewed on a periodic basis, we can say you can define the frequency or on your environment. We say, okay, certain use cases get stale over time, so or certain baselines get stale over time. So having a review every 6 months is what we recommend. That's what we do, and that is what we recommend. So defining a frequency is all dependent on the environment, the dynamic. If your environment is too dynamic, you have to define the review frequency that way. Yeah. Another question is, what is the tool used for monitoring the logs? See, there are multiple SIM tools you can use for monitoring logs. The leader is ArcSight, HP ArcSight, IBM QRadar. So these are a few tools that can be used for monitoring logs. Yeah, I have an interesting question here which says, what is SOC and what they perform? So basically, SOC is a security operations center. It gives you a first level of response on incidents. Basically, every organization defines certain parameters to be monitored from their IT environment. They bring it into monitoring, integrate it with a log monitoring solution, and this solution is being monitored by SOC, and they give periodic alerts or defined alerts which are set, which are discussed, which are agreed by the organizations. So basically, all the monitoring aspects of IT can be handled by SOC, basically security monitoring operations. Yeah, another question is, any online ticketing tracking can be monitoring or particular tool only? See, it just way of tracking your feedbacks from the asset owners. So if you track it over emails, ultimately you will not be able to find how many feedbacks you've received for a given period of time. So if you track it on a ticketing tool, assign the ownership, assign the SLAs for response. So that's the reason we are recommending using a ticketing tool. Yeah, are there any recommendations, external threat intelligence sources which we need to check regularly? So there are multiple threat feed sources, and there are a lot of paid sources as well, like NORS is one of the paid source. NORS Darklist is one of the paid source. There are multiple paid sources where you take those IP list with a score which they provide and try and integrate them with your SIM solution. There are multiple free sources as well which can be which you can check it on internet. So a lot of free sources has to be validated first before you try and integrate with your SIM solution. Yeah, is incident analytics same as forensic or it's different? So incident analytics will be different than forensic. See, forensic is something that you do a post facto analysis of what has happened, and you give a feedback, and you do a drill down of the sequence of events. But incident analytics is something which you say that, okay, I have certain logs with me, and I'm not sure what exactly has happened, but I'm trying to derive some actionable out of the logs that I have with me. So I don't have I'm not aware of what exactly happened, but I am trying to figure out what we have missed from real-time monitoring. So I'm doing an analysis of all the events which are coming to me for a defined period. I'm looking at slow and low and the most suspicious ones, and trying to see what apart from scans, what is that they have tried. So I'm doing some sort of analysis of patterns. So it is different than forensic analysis. How so next one is how and firewall will be helpful to do monitoring logs. Firewall will not monitor your logs. Firewall can, and the basic function of a firewall is to block and unblock access internal to external network. So basically they'll not monitor your logs. The logs from those devices can be integrated with the SIM solution for monitoring. How can we correlate threat events? Servers, and they are getting blocked on the firewall, and it's a very noise-making IP. But if I see that this IP was accessed by an external IP some time back, and I basically I have a external threat list, and I'm checking whether there was an access attempt from that internal system to that IP, and the same system is trying to access my internal servers. So this kind of this kind of combination of internal and external observations, we can do it with threat feeds. Okay, how to identify the use cases? Is there available data that contain a list of use cases? So a lot of SIM products will give you default use cases that may or may not apply to your environment. There are use cases which are specifically targeting PCI compliance. There are use cases which are targeting ISMS or ISO compliance. So you have to select the ones which are required for your monitoring requirements. So if I say you want to monitor an environment which is processing cardholder data, so go for the PCI package where it will give you all the use cases which is tracking the cardholder data moving around in your environment. So it all depends on your requirement. Identifying use case is something that has to be, as I said, it has to be coming from the technology owners, where they say that, okay, we have these many controls in my system and I want you to monitor them. So some of the system owners will say, I want you to alert for any changes on my firewall device during non-business hours. So these are few of the controls that they have implemented, and they want a monitoring alert for such controls. Yeah. The next question is, what if the organization has detected a zero-day event or an attack, and SOC team has not failed to unable to identify it, or how SOC can identify it? Okay, so for a zero-day attack, the team depends on basically the patterns. So if I say there are certain use cases which will focus on scanning attempts, or certain use cases which are focused on two-way communications happening, or so basically it's all based on behavioral analysis. So if I say that this kind of traffic was not seen in the environment, and suddenly we see that some of the internal systems are trying to access certain outside servers or CNC servers, so those kind of patterns can be checked for zero-day attack. See, zero-day attack basically, since there is no use cases which are specifically targeting zero-day attack, you have to look at anomaly patterns and behavioral method of detection. Okay, is there any mechanism to automatically inherit download information published by threat intelligence group? For example, how to automatically block the IP address released by SANS under top 10 recommendations IP address range. Okay, so basically if you enroll with any threat intelligence source feed provider, they'll give you a mechanism where you can download their IP list on a defined frequency. They have API options where you can integrate those lists in your SIM with a very high frequency of update. So those are the mechanisms which they provide. You can download and then validate and then upload into your SIM. That is one method, but the update frequency will be decided by you. But as I said, most of the threat IPs are an output of somebody doing effective monitoring. So if I say the list, a lot of organizations they have honeypot, they have spam traps. So the IPs which are making such attempts, they publish those IPs and they ultimately comes to this threat feeds and they publish it globally. Okay, this is an interesting question which says, how do SOC differentiate between an actual attack and a false positive attack? Okay, if I say, as I said, there has to be a feedback mechanism. So if an attack happens or if an alert event happens, the SOC sends an alert, and we constantly get a feedback saying, okay, this is a false positive alert. This was, I'll take an example of a login failure. Somebody doing a login failure internal attempt, but if a brute force attack happens, so the frequency has to be tuned that way. So if I say 5 attempts in some seconds is definitely a brute force attempt. It is not humanly possible for someone to do 5 attempts in a fraction of a second. So those kind of things has to be fine-tuned. It has to be a feedback mechanism. So the use case definition phase is a critical phase where you define all those parameters firsthand, sitting with the asset owners. Well, I guess we've answered all the questions here. Thanks for your time. Yeah, thank you.